Well, I just had Eileen Tank, Washington County Fair royalty. Now I figure I need to have Washington County government royalty with me, and I'd like to introduce Sheriff Dan Starry.
Hello.
County Attorney Pete Orput, and
Hi,
County
folks.
County Commissioner Gary Kriesel. And thanks for joining me.
Absolutely.
It's our
Thank
pleasure.
you, Margot.
Dan, explain in a brief way what your department does. See what I worry about?
I don't know if I can do that in a brief way. However,
Well, I didn't want an hour's worth, okay? Because I'll put an end
I'll
to
do
that.
an hour and 10. How's that?
Frightening.
59.
Frightening.
One of those things, we got such a great agency, and we partner well with the county attorneys and the county board and all of our departments. But our citizens, that's who we're there to serve, right? So we continue to do that. And we have 266 men and women that they go out there and they work hard every day serving the citizens of Washington County. And that's in the patrol, that's in our jail, that's in our dispatch, in our records area, civil, our court security. They just do a phenomenal job. And like I said, we hire them because they want to help. And that's the key thing that we're looking for is they want to serve, they want to help our citizens, and they do that. We just had the Scandia tornado, and we were right up in that for 2 days and making sure everyone was okay. And that's the stuff that they do. No questions asked. They just go out and do it.
Sound like you're very, very proud of your staff for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I've been there 26 years, over 26 years, and that's my agency, and I'm so proud of it.
Thank you. Pete, tell us about your department.
Well, the county attorney prosecutes all adult felonies in the county and all juvenile cases in the county, but misdemeanors are handled by cities. So if you get a DWI or, say, a fourth-degree domestic assault, that'll be handled by a city attorney. But if it becomes a felony, I take all the felonies in the county. And in addition to doing that, which is probably our most important thing, that's our public safety mission, is to hold criminals to account. We also have a pretty good-sized juvenile division, and in juvenile we treat the kids that come in there much differently than we do with adults. We try to get many of them sent right to Youth Service Bureau, where they engage in therapy and some restorative justice, and they come out very well. So I'm very proud of the work we do in our juvenile unit. We also have a child protection unit, which has to take kids from terribly dysfunctional families, and that's become very, very busy due to the opioid and methamphetamine crisis. And then we have the civil division, which protects the county in all civil matters from eminent domain to tax issues to civil commitment of the mentally ill, Medicaid reimbursement, all those kinds of things get done in the civil division. So it's a varied law practice, but it's a wonderful one.
And Commissioner Kriesel.
Thank you, Margot. Margot, that's a great question. A lot of folks might not know that county government is an extension, an administrative arm of state government. Down at the Capitol, the legislature, they make the laws, pass the programs, rules, and we administer those programs. That's 80% of what we do. The other 20% is funding the Sheriff's Department, roads and bridges, keeping our highways safe, things like that. Well, actually, we are so proud and appreciative of our county administrator, that great relationship she
Molly
has.
O'Rourke.
Molly is fantastic. She has just a great leadership team, and a good example is how they collaborate with the Sheriff's Department and the attorney. Is just wonderful to see. We have a very functional board. We all get along good. I appreciate that. And just recently, we Standard & Poor's and Moody's awarded us AAA bond rating status. That's 30 counties, about 30 counties out of 3,000 counties in the nation received that award. And they give us extra comments that amongst the top peer groups, we reside amongst the top counties. So
I'm going to go back to something you said. Tell me how you interact, like with Dan's first, and then with Pete's. The administration and or the county board. What kind of interaction do you have?
Dan and his staff. Dan is responsible for bringing forward a budget. Very efficient budget. It's very fiscally conservative, and it gets a lot of bang for the buck for the taxpayer dollar, and that pretty much we're responsible for their approving the budget. But his department, he's an elected official that, he doesn't answer to us.
I was just going to ask, so it's minimal micromanagement, Dan, with these guys?
Absolutely. As always, we have to work in cooperation and collaboration, right? And that's what we do. And it doesn't matter if it's the county board or whether it's the county agencies. We have to work together. Otherwise, things come to a grinding halt, right? And so for us, it's really making sure that the security of our citizens is paramount. We want to make sure that we're serving them to the highest ability that we can. And certainly with our budget that the county board sets for us, we do that.
Pete, tell me how you work with Dan.
We work very closely together on a number of issues. I'd say the biggest and most important is our juvenile sex trafficking initiative. Dan and I teamed up a couple of years ago, and Dan's got one of his sergeants in our office along with some other law enforcement officers, one from Oakdale, one from Woodbury, and one from Homeland Security. And that team has made some enormous strides in juvenile trafficking. They've got a number of big cases going, and these are cases that are totally awful. They involve exploitation of juveniles in the worst way. And so that's one example of how we team up. We've got a couple of homicides and an attempted homicide, and we work hand in glove right from the beginning on those, so the handoff is seamless. We work very closly together on it. Dan and I have been working together, mostly us, with some other department heads, on this opioid response. We're needing to come up with a good response to our community on opioids. I am so proud of the work Dan has been doing with me on that. We hope to have something relatively soon, but those are all collaborations we work very closely together on, and I think it benefits every citizen in this county to have that relationship working like that.
Gary, how often are you kept abreast of the various issues that they're dealing with? And there are, multiple with multiple factors to address.
They collaborate very well with our county administrator, and she keeps our board advised. And we sit in on occasional workshops where they let us know things such as Sheriff Starry is enhancing jail security, things like that. But the other thing is, I would challenge anybody to find a sheriff and a county attorney that's out more in the public than Pete and Dan.
No, I know they are.
That is, the comments I generally get from people are how appreciative they are that they're out in the community.
Yeah, they aren't hiding. I agree with that.
They don't operate in an office.
Right.
They're out in the community. They're with the people that their leadership team and things like that. So it's very wonderful.
All right, just between us.
Let me just grab that mic for a second, Margot. Thank you for those generous remarks, Commissioner. But I want to take this time, Margot, to invite our viewers. If you'd like a community presentation on crime prevention, please call Dan or me. And if you call me, I'm going to ask Dan to go with me. And we've got a number of presentations on identity theft, protecting seniors from fraud, home safety tips on how to make sure your home is burglar proof, a number of other issues.
Sex trafficking.
Sex trafficking is a very popular one. People want to know what's going on in their community. We've got a long list of them, and we'd really invite the viewers to give us a call. It's free, and it's big or small. I've been in small church basements. I've been in people's living rooms. We just want to get out and spread the word, because I think it's better to have our public informed so they don't become victims, because after they do become victims, that's a lot of work for us, and I'd prefer them not to be victimized, especially in this day and age of all the fraud going on.
If I could just jump in that regard, Margot, is that okay?
Absolutely.
Maybe you want to talk about the suicide prevention and the efforts that
Go ahead.
you're doing there. You started that initiative, and it's very well received.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, out to the fair, we have NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and we also have Make It Okay campaign right in our booth. We're partnering as well. We partnered with Public Health and Education to create a suicide awareness squad. And so it's a specialized squad vehicle that hits the road. We'll be down in Woodbury for the suicide collaboration down there and their fun run. Again, just making sure that we're out there and saying that if you're in trouble, call. We want to help you. And that's the whole thing is, there's such a stigma around suicide and depression and all of that, mental illness, and we just want to make sure that they're getting the help that they deserve, and we'll certainly give that to them. And we have the phone numbers all over our squad car. We have the, we have the website on there as well. So there's ways for them to get the help that they need, and that's truly what it's all about.
What more does your department need? Here you got one of the high ups there. It's just cut right through the chase.
That's.
Could I turn on the recorder?
Yeah.
That's always the thing. So we go in every year and we meet with the board and we meet with the county administrator just to make sure that we're at where we should be with our budget.
Okay.
And we work very collaboratively with it. Obviously, there's only so much money out there, right? And we have to be fiscally responsive to our citizens that we serve. We get elected for a reason, and that's part of it as well. They want to feel safe, they want to feel secure, but they also don't want to be gouged as well. And that's really what we look at. And so we go through, and it's a whole year process for us. We start with our deputies, we start with our sergeants, our command staff to truly dive deep into what are those needs that we need. We're getting that. We're, with the suicide squad and other things special initiatives that we're doing. Pete talked about our human sex trafficking task force. We're starting with our opioid, and we've been doing that for a little while now. We belong to the North Central HIDA, which is a drug trafficking area. Mm-hmm. And so we're really on top of this stuff. And I think we're doing very well that way. And the commissioners have been very supportive on our needs. So
I'm going to go to Pete first and then you, because I have a question. Go ahead, Pete. Tell them how what you need.
Well, we do that, and I think we've been real honest brokers with the board and our county administrator, and she's terribly honest with us. And of course, we're always looking for more staff because we're busier. But the question is, can we be more efficient with what we have? These are public dollars, and I get really scared about spending public money unless I can justify it. And I think Dan's office and my office are so data-driven now that if we have enough data to really make the case that we need more staff, it'll become obvious, and that's how we get treated by the board. I don't ask them for additional staff that would be fun to have or nice to have. I only ask when I have to have. And I made an ask this year for another legal assistant. Due to all the electronic filing and stuff, it's become very difficult for us. And they respond with yes. So before I ask them for more, I try to see if we can't be more efficient in what we do. And that's led us to a lot of things. We revamped our drug diversion program because we were getting so many drug offenders in. And we found it wasn't helpful to try to jail our way out of that or prosecute our way out of that. So we found some innovative ways to deal with it. And that's what we look for in other ways. And we go out and look for grants. I get a grant from the Department of Corrections to handle the prison prosecutions that occur. I get a grant for an auto theft grant to pursue those. Dan and I support each other on getting a human trafficking grant. So we don't want to make the county citizens bear everything to stay as safe as they are. We try to hustle and find grants that are appropriate and do work for us. And same thing with probation, as a grant to pursue this dosage probation, which is getting national attention. So there's a lot of things we can be proud of that we don't ask the taxpayers to pay for.
Gary, you have two really nice guys, hardworking, come before the board. Okay, how do you balance their needs? I mean, what's the process?
Well, the process is anytime it's a budgetary item, it comes. It's got to clear Molly O'Rourke's desk, and they collaborate very strongly with Molly. And it's pretty evident they've established great credibility and trust with our county board. they don't budget based on wants, they budget based on needs, and they have it's kind of like a data-driven process. The need is pretty doggone evident when you look, we're a fast-growing county. You look at Pete and Dan doing street sweeping, keeping the thugs off the street. It takes resources to do that.
I just visually saw that, but okay, go ahead.
And the sheriff, he'll come before our board, and he will talk about donations that his department got. We just had one with maybe you could talk about that family
I will
with
in
the
a second. Yeah, I do want to hear about that.
On the canine. I mean,
That's great.
You and I participated in that a volunteer of the year. Your brother John won, but it's the generosity of our citizens is wonderful.
Before I turn it over to Dan,
ahead.
is there public input when departments are asking? I know at the end with taxes and that.
Well, we're always transparent. Our board, our agendas, everything else. We have workshops. We try to communicate the message on social media and things like that. But, the public certainly has opportunity to weigh in.
Okay, and when? At meetings, through you guys, through emails, through phone calls? How?
All of the above. I mean, they can come into our workshops, some are public meetings, and at our board meetings. And, again, we're the second lowest tax rate in the metro area. We've won a lot of
Minnesota.
we've won a lot of awards. Like the AAA bond rating. There's a certain amount of trust, I believe, that the public has with us based on our results, that they feel we're making the right decisions. And I'll tell you, when it gets to the county board, you might see a 5-0 vote, once in a while maybe a 4-1, but a lot of these issues are well vetted in a workshop session. They're vetted by Molly sitting down with Dan or with Pete and going over we want to be supportive, because they're not bringing stuff forward unless there's a need. We know that. And Pete with his Veterans Court, the wonderful work he's doing there is just, and like I say, with Dan reaching out to our student education students or whatever, trying to talk them. There's a different way here to solve your problems. We'll hook you up with an officer if it takes a mentor or whatever. But just complete collaboration and credibility and trust amongst Molly and her department heads and Dan and Pete's department.
Well, we're going to take a quick break here, and then we're going to come back, talk about other funding sources, which are very important, because somehow I think public thinks they're funding everything, and that is not the case. So we'll be right back.
When we adopt a shelter pet, we discover they're a unique mix of all kinds of things.
Come on, Jules, spot me on this last one. There it is. Keep going with it. Leo.
They're a little bit of a lot of things, but they're all pure love.
You can achieve a lot using your imagination. I mean, I don't like to brag, but... Wait, who's that? And why is she all over these achievement awards? But with STEM, the sky's the limit. Shaboom! Use STEM to envision... Okay, I'm seeing it. Yeah. Invent...
Got any ideas?
I've got a few, actually. And create a better world.
Told you she's super smart.
If she can STEM, so can you. Find out more at She Can STEM.
Because of you sharing your story with me, I feel comfortable sharing my own.
Thank you again. Joining me are Washington County Attorney Pete Orput, Washington County Commissioner Gary Kriesel, and Washington County Sheriff Dan Starry. And I wanted to talk about funding sources because, as they say, sometimes we think, ooh, the public is carrying everything. things they may or may not agree with, but that's not true, right? You have donations and all kinds of different methods of getting money to keep the services running.
You know, Margot, Commissioner hit it right on the head. We have generous citizens that out there that really care about the sheriff's office and care about county government. And with that, we get a lot of donations through citizens or through organizations, you know, and it certainly helps. Especially with community engagement, being out there. You see us at parades and throwing out candy. The candy is not bore by the taxpayers of Washington County. It's bore on the some of the donations that we receive. You know, whether it's for canine or whether it's for community engagement, special events, the donators out there, I mean, from Forest Lake all the way down to Cottage Grove, they keep coming in, and they truly enjoy what we're doing and how we spend their money as well. And so that says a lot. But we go through a lot of grants as well, you know, whether it's the Urban Area Security Initiative or Port Security. There's a lot of grants that we do to help us offset some of those costs, whether it's in water parks and trails, emergency management, in patrol, buying some specialty type vehicles. Everyone has seen the big SWAT vehicle. That was done by a grant as well. Our big patrol operations vehicle that looks like a big camper that you see at a lot of major events like the tornado. That was done by a grant as well. So we look for and we search for those grants because they're out there, and if we can utilize those grants, it helps us as well. We live in the county. We're taxpayers as well, and we want to be fiscally responsive. So
I really like your canine colleagues. How are they funded?
You know, most of it's through levy. However, you'll see the specialized vests that our canines utilize as well. And then for training, that stuff a lot of it is done by donations. People really like our canine unit. Our canine unit does a great job. And for the public, if you haven't seen our canine demos, I would tell you to come on to the Washington County Fair. They're at 3 and 5 throughout the weekend as well. Being a former canine handler with Smokey, I certainly know the value of those dogs and what they do for us. And but the vests aren't cheap, and the training is not cheap. And so we're very proud of our team, but we want to make sure that our service animals are protected as well.
Do they wear badges? I always thought they earned them.
Yeah, they do wear badges. So they're protected by law. They're officers. They're deputies.
Don't touch them.
And we don't touch them unless they're asked.
But don't touch them.
But I tell you, you'll see out there, they perform at a very high level. Matter of fact, for the region, we just took first and third for our region in a competition, national competition.
Super.
So they are very well trained, and they're very obedient.
That's cool. Pete, do you get funding for any of your very multiple projects that you have?
We do. I, like Dan, look for every grant I can, and we're looking now for a grant to respond to the opioid crisis in the county, and some are making themselves available, so we want to be there for that. I get a grant to handle my victim witness coordinators. Anyone who's a victim of a crime that gets reported and comes to us, I assign a victim witness advocate to liaison with them, let them know when the court's coming, what's going to happen, give them an opportunity to come to court and talk, get them restitution. I have 5 of them in the office. They're very busy, and a great deal of that is paid for through a grant, which is wonderful because the taxpayers of the county aren't bearing that. Same thing with an auto theft grant. It allows us to really pursue those cases. And auto theft is still a big deal. And I've got one of my prosecutors spends half his time just doing auto thefts. Then we have other grants. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. We did have a sex trafficking grant. We've got Dan trying to get one to keep that going. I get a grant from the Department of Corrections, about $25,000 a year to pursue cases where the inmates assault corrections officers. So those offset a lot of what we do. And another source of money that doesn't come from taxpayers is forfeiture. Now, forfeiture has been getting a bad rap sometimes, but what we get is we go after these sex trafficking criminal organizations that have thousands and thousands, sometimes millions of dollars, And we want to take those proceeds from the criminals. And so it gets divided. I think 70% goes to the law enforcement officer, 20 to us, and the state gets 10. We take that 20% and do things like get a fair booth and pay for the fair booth and pay for the water and the candy and things we give out to the kids and pay for all the pamphlets we give out on crime prevention. It allows me to send my assistant county attorneys to some of the best training, national training put on by the National District Attorneys Association. I could never ask the county to pay for that, but with forfeiture money, it allows us to do those extra things, which has, I think, resulted in us having, I think, one of the finest prosecutors' offices in the state, and I think the public realizes that too.
Before I turn over to you, Gary, I just want to say I was in Florida within the last year waiting to fly back, and I'm at my hotel killing time. And I see 2 shows on Washington County, and I go, oh, my God. I mean, you were on one, yes. And it's like, whoa, either we have a problem or you guys know how to get messages out really well.
I'm so proud of the work we've done. We've been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Dateline NBC 3 times, the Today Show, and we've made a number of other national media posts in the Huffington Post and other things. We don't look for that. They catch what we're doing and find that it's extraordinary. And so I'm always super proud of my assistants getting that national attention. I really am.
Gary.
Well, let me just follow up on that. You asked earlier about justifying their needs or whatever. I mean, that's a prime example of you got to give them the funding and the tools to be successful. And they're remarkably successful in doing that. Our funding stream, we have about a $200 million operating budget, and that includes, the sheriff and the county attorney and libraries, public works, all those things. And we primarily use the levy. Again, we have the second lowest tax levy. Our tax rate keeps going down. The tax rate's more important than a levy. Mm-hmm. I mean, a levy's just well, the tax rate is what your tax rate actually is. Your levy can be higher, and your tax rate, if it's lower, you're going to pay less taxes. But anyway, we apply for grants, whether it's for community services programs. Historic courthouse is an example. We got some tremendous needs there now. The roof's got to be done. The cupola or whatever, the dome, I guess, those things. I mean, we're looking at anywhere from $1 to $2 million. So we try to find grants, donations, things like that. A lot of people might not realize the historic courthouse is a Washington County park. It's part of our parks budget, but we have the wheelage tax, $20 wheelage tax. We have a quarter-cent sales tax for transit to build out the gold line from Woodbury down to St. Paul. The county environmental charge, that charge funds environmental things. Like we're looking at putting a household hazardous waste site up in Forest Lake. And also one of the things I've heard a lot from constituents is where can they bring their brush and their tree limbs and stuff like that. So we're looking at a composting site, but
I know there never can be enough money. If there was an area or 2 or 3 that in Dan's area, which do you wish there were more funding for? That just kind of to you just thinks, oh, geez.
That's a tough one. What I wish there was more funding for is what Dan figures he needs, and I mean, because he has to. It's a rigorous process to go through Molly, and the board. But again, their track record and history is they don't bring something forward that they can't have an explanation of the need.
And would that be the same feeling for Pete too? Then whatever.
Pete.
Then tell me what you think. You wish you had more funding. Top 3 areas that just say yes.
So the things that we will be asking for in the future, certainly it's opioids. Pete and I we've really are coming up with a very collaborative but effective program to deal with the opioids. Obviously with fentanyl and carfentanil, we're seeing that right here in the metro and in Washington County, and we're seeing about 19 overdose deaths a year related to opioids, and that's way too many. We know that methamphetamine is still very used, very prevalent in Washington County, but in Minnesota. And Minnesota has actually become the hub as well for methamphetamine. The cartels will bring it right on up, and then it gets distributed from here. Just recently, Duluth just took off a huge load of methamphetamine. I believe yesterday or the day before, Rochester just took off 55 pounds of methamphetamine. And so it is
Why?
here.
What's your gut feel? I mean, you know more than gut.
Well, I
Why
think
is
that, I mean, certainly we have the infrastructure, we have the highways and the interstates that you can go east and west and north and south throughout the country. And I think it's very easy to get it up here. And so we've been very effective at getting out there, working with all of our partners, whether it's county attorney, the DEA, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and fighting this as well. So between the opioids and the drugs, but also mental health. We're starting up a program, and we're in the initial phases of stepping up, and this is really dealing with those with mental health issues that are in our jail or are going to be in our jail. Can we prevent them and get them help before they get into our jail? Typically, officers out on the street or the deputies out on the street, they get called to a situation like that, and there's nowhere to turn. Beds are full, everything else. So Pete and I mean, we're really trying, in community corrections and public health, we're really trying to come up with the right program that fits Washington County. So I think those are probably our needs as we go forward.
Tell it from your end, what would be high-end needs that you just have to get funding?
Well, I think Dan said it, because we work so closely together. If you gave me 5 more prosecutors, you'd have to give Dan 5 more cops to keep those 5 prosecutors busy. So it's kind of an elastic band. As crime goes up, Dan will need more, and as Dan needs more, I'll need more. And that's how it works. So until we really do, we look for every way in the world to make it happen without asking the taxpayers to bear all of it. And I know Commissioner Kriesel gave me a nod on my Veterans Court. That saves this county a great deal of money.
Explain what that is.
Well, we get a justice-involved veteran. Typically, we see Iraq and Afghanistan combat vets that come home, and almost all of them that we deal with are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, maybe a traumatic brain injury. At any rate, they get involved in the criminal justice system through alcohol and other ways to self-medicate. When we get them, we ask them to go into our Veterans Court, and they have to get screened by the Veterans Administration to find out all the problems. They have to commit to doing the therapy, which is difficult and sometimes really painful. That post-traumatic stress, it takes usually a year, sometimes 2. They've got to quit drinking, and they've got to start changing. We provide the means to do it. By we, I say our Veterans Administration partners. So they take the costs that would typically be borne by the county for that, to pay for their treatment and that, and it's borne by the VA. And the success rate has been remarkable. The people we see graduate, we never see them again, except they want to come back and volunteer to mentor some of the younger guys. It's something that really saves money, and we're doing the right thing to the right person.
And also they get leniency from the court for, how would you explain that, Pete?
Yeah. If they agree to do all this work, I will agree to not give them a conviction. But they have to earn it. And the reason why is none of these folks went in the service a criminal. You couldn't. I mean, the background checks are difficult. The only reason why we're seeing them here in court now is because after 2, 3, 4, sometimes more tours of combat, they are going to come back. Not all, but several. And they're going to end up trying to self-medicate all that pain. And I think we have a moral obligation to go, before I give this guy a criminal conviction, we broke him, we fix him, is what I say. And we have to give him an opportunity to find that redemption back. And the people who are most proud of our program are their partners and wives and spouses. And by the way, I've had 2 women in it. Those women weren't combat vets, but they were victims of military sexual trauma, and we consider that essentially the same. And they're both doing very, very well. I mean, it's really, you get to watch miracles happen, and that's something I'm very proud of.
I love this show. I'm learning so much.
Yeah.
I want to know, I know all 3 of you are elected officials. Are there any states where they're not? They're appointed. Are you aware
Well, I
of any?
know. Connecticut, I think they're appointed.
How do you feel about having to be up every 4 years?
Oh, I think it's it's the essence of democracy. And I've always said to our voters, if you don't like what I'm doing, get me out of there. Because I'm working too hard for them, and if I'm missing the mark, I need to be held to account. I think we all need to be held to account, and the way to hold us to account is through an election, and I welcome that. In fact, Sheriff Starry had an election last year and won it resoundingly, but people got to ask questions about who he is and what are his values, and I think everybody ought to stand for that.
Excuse me. Go ahead, Dan.
No, I absolutely, Margot. I think that is part of the democracy that we live in, right? And so with that, we do have to answer to the citizens, whether it's about taxes and how we're spending or what we're doing per policy and procedures. They want to know, and we make sure that we're out there and we're involved in the community and talking with our citizens. Like Pete says, we are every 4 years
accountable.
That is one of the things that we're accountable to, and I think that means a lot. Means a lot to me. I know as a taxpayer and as a citizen of Washington County that I can go to the voting booth and vote the way I want.
I'm just glad it's not every 2 years. As sometimes the commissioners, when they have oh my gosh,
redistricting.
Yeah, 2 would be. Oh my God, you'd always be on the phone having to get when you should be doing the work.
A good example that people could compare to on the accountability issue. Right now, it's somewhat controversial about the Met Council. They're appointed and they're not necessarily directly accountable to the taxpayers. So I think that's a classic example. So a lot of us feel that should be a council of government, whether it's county commissioners from the metro area or whatever are assigned membership to it. Then you got direct accountability back to the voters.
It's interesting you comment because I do ask that question a lot in my candidate forums every 2 years. So what are your top concerns right now? Anything?
Our top concern right now, our number one legislative priority, Washington County's number one priority is to get the Manning Avenue Highway 36 interchange built. Now, what we need. We have $7 million of federal funding. That'll go away in 2021. It has to be something has to be approved by next year. But we'll lose the funding by 2021. We got $7 million federal funding, $3 million local funding, Stillwater, $5 million from the county. We need the state to pony up $15 million. We got Senator Bingham, Senator Housley working really hard. I'm confident they're going to get her done this year. But that intersection, and Dan can attest to it, there's been some terrific accidents out there. Highway 36, when the bridge opened up, we've had a 20% increase in traffic. It's like 55,000 cars a day going through there. It's operating as a freeway, and it's got stoplights on a freeway. That doesn't work that way.
I'll say it doesn't.
And some people question, well, should have the bridge been built? Well, you have to balance downtown Stillwater was being destroyed. They had traffic backups all the way up to St. Mike's Church. You had traffic backed up to the Bayport cutoff on 95. You had traffic weaving in and out of all the neighborhoods. Yeah, it should have been built. And just the pollution from idling cars and everything else, it made sense to do it. But now you go over by Fleet Farm on Hadley, that's an interchange now. And it's going to be that domino effect. You start taking care of these, so you're not going to have all those rear-end collisions or T-bone collisions, and really, that's our number one priority. There's hospital looking at expansion out there.
I hear that's on hold for like 5 years.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe they're holding it because they don't have certainty about what's going to be built there. But Hy-Vee's looking at, on the other side. So all those things are playing in. Pretty confident we'll get her.
When the three of you go to work in the morning, how do you prioritize? Have you done it the day before? Because things come in. Everything happens in your worlds. How do you do it? I'll ask you.
Well, first things first, anybody that's in our jail needs to get up before a judge within 48 hours, and that's on me to draft a complaint based on the reports at Dan's office. So they have to type a report. It isn't just throw a guy in a jail. They have to write up all the evidence they've gathered, send it to me. I end up encapsulating that in a complaint, send it to the court. So that drives number one when you walk in, who's in jail and who. But going forward, we have long-term strategies and plans and short-term. The long-term ones we keep working together on, like Dan said, the stepping up, the opioid. We're always talking about how can we provide more safety and stay on top of the crime that's changing all the time. We've got into all this digital cyber crime going on. We have to respond to all those things. So those are our long-term goals. Short-term, how are we doing? Are we making sure people are safe here and now? And I think that consumes a great deal of our thought. It does for Dan and me, I think.
No, I agree. And I mean, certainly we're reactive as well, right? I mean, the tornado, we have to go out there and we have to do that with the major calls that are out there and the major crimes
in
that
either
are out
your
there.
worlds.
But those are the things, we're there 24/7. I get calls all hours of the night, throughout the day, and it's priority, but you just do it. This is a labor of love, so it's not work for me. It's certainly a career, and I just...
both of you are super passionate. I know that. So are you, Gary. Yeah, there's no question on that. In fact, for the viewers, he's actually acting low-key. I mean, I know our yards are actually scary.
I gotta run 12, 13 hours a day.
Yeah, this is you at low-key.
Margot, the other thing that we're really working hard on is our officer wellness. And that's really about taking care of our deputies that are working the road, but our dispatchers, our correctional officers that they give so much every day. And we're starting to see that with suicides throughout the profession and the PTSD throughout the profession. And we want to make sure that we take care of them as well. And the county board's been very, very supportive of that as well.
That's
in fact, my office engaged along with some of the sheriff's deputies in half-day training on vicarious trauma. Those victim witness advocates are dealing with.
I've never heard that.
Well, what it really means is after a while of dealing with victims, the survivors in homicides, in terrible crashes, in the opioid deaths, we have to meet with those family members. It takes a little sliver out of your spirit, and if you're not careful, you'll end up self-medicating. Right. So we try to address that. And they call that, addressing the vicarious trauma. Your trauma affects me. And when you work so closely in getting a case prepared for trial with the witnesses and the victims, if you're not careful, you'll start feeling that stuff and you'll find yourself in trouble. So we really advocate proactive approaches to addressing that.
What do you have to say? Final words.
Final word.
First of all, how do you prioritize, and then your final word?
Well, we have a scheduler in our office now that we're a 5-member board. Most other counties have 7 members, so we have a scheduler that will work our calendars, the meetings coming up and things like that through emails or whatever. That's one way. The other one is just processing, reading emails that we get from Molly and interacting over the phone or stopping in and visiting with her, or a lot of it's those routine calls you get from your constituents. And I think all of us commissioners, and probably Pete and Dan the same way, I don't consider myself so much as representing Washington County as me representing the citizen to the Washington County process, no, we're in a good place. We're in a real good place right now.
I'll tell you, as a constituent, I'm very glad that all 3 of you get along well, because it'd be awful, and they're out there, where you have counties where they can't stand each other, and you're not getting anything done.
No. That's, in fact, Margot, that's all our departments work really carefully. Dan and I have convened meetings with 3 or 4 other department heads at least once a month, to talk about things that are shared interests.
What would they be? The other department
community services, community corrections, public health, and they've been meeting with us, again, on the opioids, on the stepping up, addressing mentally ill. We talk about the community problems with our friends in public health. Kids are vaping, and are they going to be vaping marijuana-infused things? So we need to be on top of that. And So we do that all the time. And you know what? I consider my commissioners my friends, and they're also my chief accountant, and they tell me what I get to spend. But there's nothing adversarial there. We share all the same values, and same thing with the sheriff and the other department heads. It's like really a shared value thing. We went into do this kind of work because we want to help the public. We want to give to the public. None of us went in it for any money. And so we all share those values, and we get a lot done that way.
Just a quick comment, if I could, Margot. Throughout the departments in Washington County, including the sheriff and Pete, they live by the motto of it's remarkable what can get done if nobody's worried about who gets the credit.
Right.
Yeah,
They are the
I like
first.
that. That's neat.
They are the first to make sure that their commanders and lead attorneys get full credit for it.
do. I try to get them there.
But somewhere along the line, you have some bad apples. I mean, it's just the luck of the draw working for you. How do you address them? I mean, do you give them, maybe you don't, but I'd be surprised because every department seems to, everywhere, not just county, corporations.
Margot,
do.
every agency,
Yeah, exactly.
everyone does, right? But we take care of them swiftly. I mean, obviously there's processes in place that we need to follow.
Yeah.
But we make sure that everyone who's working for us is doing the right thing.
It's so hard,
And
though, because
that's-
they're a diversion when, you have all the good stuff going on.
There is, absolutely. But that is why we have the people that we work for us as well, making sure that we are following the right procedures, the right policies. And we make sure that they're corrected if they are not.
Do they stay there a long time in the sheriff's department? 'Cause
again,
I could get burnout in a thing like that.
Like I said, I've been there 26 years.
Well,
I'm going on 27.
Yeah.
But we see a lot. We have Commander Dexter. She's retiring here in August. She's been 31 years altogether. And so absolutely, we have a lot of people that have a lot of years. They're dedicated and they're committed to Washington County.
And they live here?
And they live here.
Which is cool. Pete, I know that you have actually gone out and recruited all over. I mean, you search.
Well, the key, when you say how do you address people that, aren't on the
Yeah,
program, yeah. And I think it starts with the hiring. And that's why I took a proactive approach. I don't want to have people respond to a want ad. I know who's out there. And if they share our values, that's what I really look for. There's a lot of lawyers out there, but I want lawyers who are committed to being fair to the offenders that we deal with, fair to everyone else they deal with, and really does care about people. And once I get that weeds out a lot of the miscreants because they come in with the shared values. But it's difficult, and when you do have somebody that demonstrates they don't share the same values, you do have to progressively discipline them out. Mm-hmm. I've never fired anybody, but I have had a couple of people who insisted upon leaving the office. Otherwise, our turnover is so low. It's when we get an opening, it's just a coveted thing to have.
I would just like to say that both of them, and Molly O'Rourke, and the entire leadership of Washington County knows that people are human. They might hit a bump in the road for whatever reason, and there's coaching and counseling and training to help them get through that. They're not looking to... Turnover is very expensive, as you well know, to have to retrain people, and they take it very seriously to work with employees, get them lined up with HR or whatever,
right,
for whatever's bothering them.
We have just about a minute each for each of you. Is there anything that we haven't addressed that you'd like to address to the viewers?
Margot, what I would like to say, it's a pleasure to serve. There's no doubt about it as a sheriff. I'm the 30th sheriff, and we have such incredible staff. They work hard every day. One of the things I want to end with is the distracted driving. That took place on August 1st, the new law. And we're still seeing people holding their cell phones in their hands. And I just want to make sure that everyone knows, and we've been on Facebook and we've been publicizing it, but the new law is you can't hang on to your cell phone in your hand while the vehicle is in motion on the street. You can't do that. At a stoplight, you can't have that in your hand. And we continue to see that. It's obviously it's new. but it's going to be much like seatbelts. It's going to take a while, but it's for the safety of everyone.
Well, this is where I feel guilty, that new slowpoke law. I mean, it's like, okay, I'm going 55, and am I a slowpoke because I'm in the left
Yes.
Gee, okay.
Yes, you are.
I was really happy about that
So we're in
slowpoke
jail.
bill, but I'm with Dan. I worked for several years down at the legislature trying to get the legislature to address a hands-free thing. Now, I've made a number of calls with the phone next to my ear, but I think we had a number of tragedies over the last 2 years because of people on their cell phones or texting. And
Lake
that had to
Elmo
stop.
Avenue.
And that did have to stop. But I, too, like Dan, I am so proud of the assistants and all the staff that work in my office. They're out volunteering on their time here at the fair, too. They're proud of what they do, and I'm proud of what they do, and I can't say enough for them. And the other thing is I get great recognition for my staff from our county board. They're frequently coming over and bringing popcorn just to let them know how hard they work, and that means a lot to all of them.
Thank you.
Last word is for me. You got to enjoy this work. If you don't enjoy it, and that goes for these two gentlemen too. If you don't enjoy it,
Get
you're in
out.
the wrong line of
Get
work.
out.
You gotta like
Right.
people.
Right.
Yeah, you do.
Thank you, Gary, Pete,
Yeah.
Dan. Really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us.
Good job.